No, why did you bring us to a pirate port full of pirates?
Because we are also pirates.
Hey, welcome back to ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy, and we got to talk about Skeleton Crew, and if this show is signaling that Star Wars is dying. Star Wars is dying? Ah, jeez. Well, look, I don't think Star Wars is dying, but interest in the show is low. And there was one point in time when anything with Star Wars labeled on it would have gotten the whole internet talking. So I'm going to give you my thoughts on the show, and a little later I'm going to talk to Heather Antos and Dodd Seitz to get their take. And today I want to know, what is the future of Star Wars, and is this show the way forward? Quick reminder that we do have new holiday sales at our merch store and a ton of new designs that we are so proud of that we designed for you. And you can also get tickets to our live show. We're in Chicago on Sunday, December 8th, and we have 8 more shows next year where we can meet, nerd out, and create a new ScreenCrush video together. And as always, for up-to-the-date information and just to geek out with me, you can join our free Discord server. So first, let's talk about these first 2 episodes of Skeleton Crew. Guys, it's hard for Star Wars to surprise me. I mean, the premise for this show was laid out pretty clearly in the trailers. A bunch of kids get on a ship that takes off and they're stranded in space. But then they added in this little twist that the planet is actually hidden from the rest of the galaxy. And I find this so exciting. I have no idea what this planet is or its connection to Star Wars pirate lore. So far, this show has done a great job of recognizing what exactly makes Star Wars work. It has to feel familiar and yet be new. Like these kids in the show, they seem to be closely modeled after the kids from the Goonies. You have the dreamer, the tech kid, the husky heartfelt kid, and the streetwise loudmouth. And the show could have pretty much been this, you know, the kids get into trouble, etc., etc. But as soon as they get to the pirate base, the show suddenly expands. Then we finally get to see an aspect of Star Wars that has only been hinted at in the original movies, Clone Wars, and The Mandalorian. We finally get to see that seedy space pirate underworld. Now, like I said, we've only caught glimpses of this before, but this corner of the Star Wars galaxy has only ever really been explored in the comics and novels.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, we've seen criminal syndicates in Star Wars before, the Hutts, the Pikes, the Black Sun, etc. But in the Outer Rim, there are also these roving bands of pirates who are a major threat to shipping lanes. The enemy in the High Republic novels is a network of pirates called the Nihil, and they are a perfect adversary for both the Jedi and the Republic. So I would love to see pirates threaten the New Republic in the same way. In The Mandalorian, we already saw the New Republic refuse to help Navarro when it was attacked by pirates.
We can't leave them defenseless.
Of course not. But we have a backlog of requests from member worlds that have priority.
And it seems like the New Republic's struggle to keep law and order would be a big part of this period between trilogies. So this is taking a familiar concept, pirates, and placing it in the center of a conflict in the Star Wars galaxy, and I am so excited for it. But most of all, I like that this show feels like it has a real element of danger.
Why, hello, handsome. Nice face you shaved there.
Why, thank you. That's because of Dollar Shave Club. Look, guys, we are not teenagers anymore, and we know there's more to shaving than just scraping a razor across your face. Dollar Shave Club helps me to maintain the straight lines of my beard with grooming products that are always high quality, but never overpriced. For instance, this is their Club Series 6 blade razor with 6 stainless steel blades for a close shave. With a vitamin E infused lubricant strip for comfort and glide, it also gives precision trimming and precise detailing perfect for my beard line. And I have it attached to their heavy metal handle, which has a really good heft to it.
Well, if there's too much weight, you lose power on the swing.
That's really a lot more information than I asked for.
And you know, thanks to Dollar Shave Club, I now have a whole shaving routine. For instance, this is their prep scrub, which gets me ready to shave, and this is their shave butter. Now, I love their shave butter because it's a translucent cream alternative, so I can actually see where I'm shaving. And the post-shave dew is formulated with a blend of botanical extracts to help relieve post-shave irritation and redness. And I have really sensitive skin, so this one is a major plus for me. But the best part is Dollar Shave products are now available everywhere, so you can order from their website, Amazon, or get them at your favorite retailer near you. But hey guys, don't take my word for it. Try this for yourself. You won't regret it. These are amazing products. You can visit their site right now for 20% off, $20 or more, and you can get your products delivered right to your front door. Visit dollarshaveclub.com/ScreenCrush and use the promo code ScreenCrush for 20% off a purchase of $20 or more.
Wow, I really got a lot of information just from one compliment. And remember everybody, however you shave, Dollar Shave Club is here to help you stay handsome.
That's right, Doug. Now, back to what I was saying. So, like I said, there is a real sense of danger in this show. I really feel like these kids are in trouble and they're in over their heads. I mean, I know that they won't die. That's the rule.
Kids don't die!
But did any of you really feel like these kids were just screwed? They're lost, they have no way to find their home, and they're also kind of idiots.
Well, that's not nice.
No, I mean it in a good way. In other words, the kids behave like actual kids. Wim is a dreamer who screws up a lot, and they all kind of just want the same things that kids want. Some want to ditch school, some want their parents' approval. I mean, they're very relatable characters. But most importantly, there's the mystery of their planet. Does the planet still think it's part of the Old Republic? Do they know about the Clone Wars or the Empire? Is this going to connect to the sequel trilogy? We just don't know, and that is very exciting. Now, in a lot of ways, the show reminds me of The Acolyte. That is another show that had connections to the greater universe, but still told its story separate from anyone named Skywalker or Palpatine. And The Acolyte also managed to surprise me, what with all that Jedi child murder.
What you say?
Now, The Acolyte was not perfect, but it did expand the Star Wars galaxy in some fun, interesting ways. Kind of like what this show is doing, and yet the fans don't really seem to be showing up. Like, Andor is the best thing that Star Wars Disney has made, and it took fans a long time to come on board for it.
Well, wait, how do you know fans aren't on board for it?
Well, that's a really good question, Doug. So, like, my biggest measure of fan enthusiasm is the views we get on our Easter egg videos. And I keep thinking about how the views for Book of Boba Fett were huge, and that was a really mediocre show. And I do think that people will come around to Skeleton Crew like they did for Andor, but it seems like there's no sense of urgency to watch these stories that aren't connected to the original and prequel trilogy. Which begs the question, is the Skywalker family the limit to this saga? If it is, then Star Wars can't last forever. Eventually, we're going to run out of stories to tell that take place in this specific 45-year time span. Like, if they keep going back to that well, then we'll get stories like the Book of Boba Fett, which was fun, but didn't really tell a character-driven story that surprised you.
Well, the 2 episodes about a totally different guy, that was surprising.
I mean, yeah, but exactly. See, the Book of Boba Fett felt like they were throwing all the member berries against the wall just to see what would stick. And if that's what Star Wars has to do to get fan interest, well, then doesn't mean that Star Wars is basically dead. But on the other hand, think of The Mandalorian. That first season only had very loose connections to the rest of the saga. It was fun to see the edges of the galaxy, to see the saga get a little bit of shading. Now, I think that Skeleton Crew will actually be more like The Mandalorian. It's going to begin with a small, personal story that is actually going to lead into a wider galactic conflict. At least, I hope it gets the chance. I mean, when Disney abruptly canceled The Acolyte, it made me afraid for any Star Wars TV show that doesn't tie directly into the movies. Now, I want to know what you guys think, if Star Wars needs connections to the movies or if it can develop its own stories. And to help me answer all these questions are two of my very favorite Star Wars people in the world. We have Heather Antos, group editor at IDW Comics, and of course a Star Wars expert, and Dodson Seitz. Dodson, who writes for us all the time and contributes greatly to our Star Wars content and Easter egg videos that we make. Heather, I just want to find out from you guys first, like, did you actually like the show? Heather, what did you think of it? First 2 episodes.
Yeah, I thought it was super fun. It did take me a little bit to get into, I think, the 80s family movie Goonies-esque vibe of the show, because that's not something we've really seen in modern Star Wars. It's certainly, you could compare it, I guess, to the kids' adventure tone of the Ewoks films, but we don't need to go there. But no, I thought it was super fun. I think it's a perfect blend of the Goonies, Pirates of the Caribbean, and Star Wars, all of my favorite things. I was worried about the visual language of this show leaning too hard into pirates, and we've only got a taste of it, but it still feels very, very Star Wars in the design. We've seen in some of the other shows straying a little too sci-fi, a little too fantasy, and it's...
I kind of thought this show was going to stray a little too far into real world. I thought it was going to be like the diner, like Dex's Diner in Attack of the Clones, and the sports bar and stuff like that. Yeah. What did you think of that balance? Did you think it was spacey enough?
We got there. I think episode 2 we got there. Episode 1, I do appreciate the tongue-in-cheek of the school bus, the breakfast cereal, the playing with the action figures. All of that stuff did feel very, very real world. But I did appreciate the nod. And again, I have to remind myself throughout all of this that I'm in my 30s. I'm not the target audience for this show, right? Sure. The only thing that I really have to poke at, and it's just my own storytelling grievance that I catch and just drives me crazy, is the fact that episode 1's cliffhanger was the marketing hook of the show. The marketing hook of the show is kids lost, leave planet, get lost in space, can't find their way home, and that's exactly how the episode ended, which almost makes me feel episode 1 and 2 were originally conceived as a single episode.
I can see that.
Right, yeah. So, but I think it's so fun. The character dynamics are hilarious. Minimus Rebo is what I'm calling him, but
because he's not an Ortolan too. I said that in our Easter egg video, and I was wrong. Yeah. I was wrong, and I even in the edit, I was like, actually, did they redesign this species because he doesn't really look like Max Rebo? I was just wrong. I'm sorry, everybody. I was wrong. I will also note. I'm going to place this show second place in terms of Star Wars characters eating cereal, because Cyril and his mom is still that Catherine Hunter scene is still the best cereal scene we've ever seen in the galaxy.
I forgot that is cereal. Yeah. They are having cereal.
I just having a miserable time with her. Dodd, what about you? You've been really patient so far. Before we get into the fate of Star Wars and how it hinges entirely upon this Goonies and space madcap space adventure, what did you think of the actual first 2 episodes?
Look, I came in with low expectations, thinking, hey, it's just gonna be another Star Wars show kind of thing. It seems like they're kind of trying to go for a space Goonies thing, and to me, honestly, that felt a little bit at first. And then now, after seeing it, I was actually really excited, mostly because I love space pirates, and I think that aspect of Star Wars. One, it makes the most sense that they would be this big kind of force within the universe kind of thing. And I feel like it's heavily unexplored. We know that Lucas wanted to explore that in his potential sequel trilogy. And so I always felt it was a great idea that was kind of left on the table. And so seeing more of that, and then just seeing the way that it was woven in, I love SM-33, Shmi, and just the whole design of the character, having the peg leg, the way his cords dangle down his back and look like a pirate coat,
and
the one eye,
kind of a parrot with a mouse, a limp,
right. Everything about that, to me, I love it when Star Wars really does this painting fantasy with sci-fi kind of thing, and I think that this series has done it probably some of the best I've seen in Star Wars in a long time. Plus, you can't not help but love the deep cut with the holiday special stuff. Anytime holiday special reference comes up,
that was fun.
I'm I audibly started clapping. I was like, yes.
Dodd, let me ask you this before we get into all the pirate stuff. Earlier I talked about how I think Star Wars, Book of Boba Fett's a great example of, let's just take all the member berries and mash them into member berry wine and get people drunk on it, right? You had things like Chrysanthemum was in there from the comics. G. Heather, thank you for that, by the way. Heather was editor of the Marvel Comics Star Wars line and oversaw the creation of the character.
There you go.
We had that combined with prequel stuff and sequel stuff and the Mandalorian. It was all just kind of thrown together along with cool spin turns and mods, and it was everything thrown up against the wall. This show opened with a pretty direct homage to the opening of A New Hope. And I don't think they're trying to say that Skeleton Crew is going to be the new A New Hope. I just think John Watts really wanted to do his own version of the opening of A New Hope, which makes me think, is that... I want to get into this in a second, but that's a lot of Easter eggs and callbacks that always go back to the original trilogy. All the evil species that we see are always the same evil guys from Jabba's palace, and you can't tell me that every single Quarren, Nikto, and Weequay are always going to be bad guys, Dodd, what did you think about that? Are we getting, was that too much? Does that distract you from the actual story? That opening Easter egg?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. Not in and of itself, but I think it depends on the attitude that they have going forward with it. I think there's a big distinction between, as you were talking about, just the member berry soup kind of stuff that we get that's not good. I mean, Book of Boba Fett was, had plenty of disappointments within it. I mean, I'm a big Cad Bane fan, and even that was disappointing for me. But first couple of seasons of Mandalorian, I think, did do it well. And I think one of the big key elements that I think was really working for them there is that instead of, looking to what they can put from the original trilogy. They look at the things that inspired Lucas when he was making the original trilogy. And when you have that kind of like source inspiration coming from it that's bleeding onto the work, I think that does translate well. And that's where we've seen the successes come from within like the Disney Star Wars kind of situation. And so if with that said, like we see stuff from Pirates of the Caribbean, we see stuff from Goonies, we see stuff from a lot of different places. I'm definitely feeling a lot of different, like the inspirations are what's driving the work versus just trying to throw us member berries out there. Like I sat there and I tried to pause the screen and I tried to look around all over the room for, you know, small little Easter eggs that they could have put in there. There's tons of things that they could have put in there, right? It would have been really fun to sit there and try to find them, but they didn't. They were more focused on the story aspects of it, but they still did included things like making the desks look like an Etch-a-Sketch because they wanted to go for like a grounded feel of what it is.
Right.
If it's not just like the nostalgia member berry stuff, I'm okay with it being having those echoes of the original trilogy because I think that that's what works best for it when it looks at the stuff that inspires it.
You know, John Watts did say that they went back and they watched a lot of the pirate serials from like the 1930s and 40s, Captain Kidd, stuff like that, Flying Dutchman. So that is to what you talked about. Like in The Mandalorian and Ahsoka, you see a lot of samurai influenced things instead of just copying what George Lucas copied from samurai films. So I also think the show hit that. I do hope that the Goonies stuff is done now, because if the whole thing is like, because every character, like I talked about earlier, already has a parallel to the Goonies. I know the Goonies really well. I know how the Goonies ends, and I don't want to feel like I'm watching a Goonies remake. Take the template, take the format. A million other movies have done that, but I really hope they keep going and they explore it from there. So, Heather, to kind of bring this home, how does Star Wars, how is it supposed to hit a balance here? Because I do think fans are going to come home for this show. I think word of mouth's going to get out. I think our poor views are going to raise eventually. But it does seem like, because Star Wars fandom is also so divided, that if it doesn't look and smell like the original trilogy in a certain way, it's not going to be embraced. Would you agree with that?
You know, I think it's a couple different factors in there. I mean, first of all, everyone go tell your friends to watch ScreenCrush's videos, so Ryan is less sad.
So I can sleep.
Yes.
So I can sleep all day. Yeah.
But no,
Fine.
I think it goes back to a conversation, you know, we had during Ahsoka, and we had during The Acolyte, and we've had during Book of Boba Fett, and we've had during Mandalorian, and we've had during Bad Batch, and we've had during and right? Mm-hmm. There's so much Star Wars right now. There's so much, and it is so flooded. We're not getting a chance to be excited for what's new, and we're not getting a chance to miss it when it's gone. You know, I was thinking about when I first heard of Skeleton Crew in the public eye, right? A long time ago. It was announced a long time ago. You know, and then it was...
I kept on getting it mixed up with Rogue Squadron because I think that they came out with those announcements.
They came out with those announcements.
Yeah.
Skeleton Crew was a little bit later because John Watts was still attached to do Fantastic Four at the time.
But we've known about Skeleton Crew coming for like close to 2 years before, you know, before the show actually happened. And yes, I know there was writer strikes and SAG strikes and all of those things in between, which do cause some delays, but it also doesn't give us a lot of time to miss it. On top of, you know, we get the trailer for Skeleton Crew, what 6 months ago, where there's an entirely separate show in between it for us to like forget that hype. You know, I think a lot of the struggles we might be having with this one, again, aside from the fact that less than a week ago, they changed the release date, right? There's a lot of messiness and randomness happening behind the scenes, I think, that are affecting how viewers are getting excited or not excited for the shows. I mean, you know, Acolyte started very, very strong and unfortunately, you know, ended very poorly and then didn't get a season 2 renewed. You know, that leaves people on a bit of a bummer going into whatever's next. And I don't... and I was just going to say, and I don't think Star Wars did a very good job pivoting on a marketing side as soon as they knew that Acolyte wasn't doing well and that they weren't going to, it wasn't looking good for a green light, they should have started being, guys, get pumped about this next thing and let's really hype it up. And I just don't think they did a really good job on that push. I think if you're going to have as much saturated Star Wars stuff as you are right now, unfortunately, as we've seen, Skywalker Saga seems to be what is getting people hyped, but I don't think it has to be that way.
I really hope not. I mean, there's a million things about Star Wars. Like, I wasn't so much hyped. I keep saying I'm going to make a video about this, but I wasn't so much hyped about Acolyte Season 1. We talked about it on here. There were narrative problems with it. But I thought the premise was great for Season 2. What I was going to say earlier was I just think they made a mistake when they assumed they would get a Season 2.
Absolutely.
Andor got the money and started filming Season 2 right away. I don't think that Lucasfilm was able to push all their chips quite on Leslie Headland just yet. But you guys are talking about too much Star Wars. For one, for me, it's never too much Star Wars, and I do this for a living, right? Like, I watched every episode of The Bad Batch the day it came out, and I would have whether I covered it or not. I think maybe their balance, what I could see in the future is like a season of an animated show, a season of a live-action show, and a movie. I kind of look back at The Acolyte, and I go, would have made a good movie. Or I look back at Obi-Wan and go, I would have made a good movie, you know? And Book of Boba Fett would have done a lot of things, could have done a lot of things different. I do think that the lack of movies to kind of tie things in, but then again, I'm like, I personally love watching these shows on Disney Plus, but I get it doesn't have Luke in it and any of this other stuff. It doesn't feel necessary to watch. So maybe people just are waiting till at their leisure and not checking out the night of.
You have that. You have, seeing a Star Wars used to be an event. It used to be such an event. And yes, the hardcore fans like you, me, and Dad, we're going to watch everything no matter what, day and date. We're going to watch it 3 times no matter what, day and date, because that's just how the people we are. But the majority of viewers are the casual viewers that, when you also have Wicked and Moana 2 and Gladiator 2 and all of these other options right now of things that feel must see, have to watch now so you don't have to miss out. I don't know if Skeleton Crew has been sending that same message.
Yeah. And I think to kind of build on that too, like, we talk about all the content that we have here and how it feels flooded with content. But like, who that casual fan that you're talking about is, Heather, like, it's kind of a weird space to be in right now, right? Because if you're one of those older fans that would be in more of the casual, the people that would consume those kind of things, like, you kind of have to be where we're at with all of, like, the knowledge, to understand the Easter eggs, to understand all the connections to where these fit in with the plot, why the Jedi are now wearing yellow robes and, going after and killing people, and all of those aspects of it, right? It seems very complicated. I think it's the same problem that people talk about with Marvel, feeling like they have to do a lot of homework before they come into the series. And, I think that for me, looking back at it, Brian, you were saying earlier, I hope they're kind of done with like the Goonies side of it. And I was thinking for a second, I was like, I think that's actually not. I think they should do more of the Goonies style thing. At the end of the day, like, what Star Wars was originally was a show for kids, and if there's any demographic that they need to keep Star Wars alive, to keep the momentum going with it, they need to start reaching out for more kids. So Skeleton Crew could have a lot of advantages in there and being that approachable thing. I can imagine being a kid right now watching Skeleton Crew and being like genuinely excited, and also feeling,
because the kids actually talk like kids, just like they did in the Goonies. Yeah,
right.
Well, I think you misunderstood me. I'm not saying get away from the kid stuff. I'm saying don't copy the story beats of the Goonies. Yeah. Like, don't do that. In the same way, I hope there's not an alien beaming designs into one of the kids' head, because that's the Explorers and other 80s movies like that. I'm going to push back on a couple things you said, though. I think The Acolyte was a really good entry point for people because it was before, because you didn't really have to know anything other than Jedi good, Sith bad. The problems with that show, I think, we're just all structural. Like, you're going to do a murder mystery show and solve the mystery in episode 1. It just, like I said, I'm going to make a video about all this because I can't let it go in my head. And I think this show is a perfect entry point. And like you said, it's great for kids to be watching it and to just learn to love Star Wars, on their own. Because correct me if I'm wrong here, I don't think the sequel trilogy really gave kids that option. I think it was a movie meant for people who grew up with Star Wars, and it was trying to distance itself from the prequels, which were more kid-friendly, And I don't think that they ever really tried to introduce totally new characters that weren't through the lens of all the stuff that had happened before. But that's just my opinion. Rey's probably the exception to that. But even then, she still becomes a character who is beholden to the legacy of other characters. That's not what we're talking about, but go ahead, Heather.
I was just going to say, I think the sequel trilogy started strong in trying to, reframe what was familiar in a new light, and brought in a lot of new fans that way. But that, just then became too self-referential and redundant.
Heather, if you're working at Lucasfilm, right? If you're somebody who can, have say in this sort of thing, where's the balance between this? Because I do think there's maybe something to a movie that, like, if Skeleton Crew was a movie and Ahsoka was a TV show, you know what I mean? Where you're taking, like, something familiar and it can go on Disney Plus, but then something new gets introduced with a little bit more fanfare. Where do you see that balance hitting with this canon? Or should they just not do things in different timelines and commit to one timeline? Where do you see this at?
Yeah, I definitely don't mind a variety of timelines. I don't think that's really, at this point in Star Wars fandom, we're very, very used to it. All the stories and all the varying timelines. I think they need to do a better job of making it clear what timeline
Sure.
The current story is coming in, because unless you've read that opening crawl in Skeleton Crew, like, until they say in episode 2, Republic credits, where did you get those? You might be a bit confused. Not that I think it really matters up until that point, but I think just having a clear direction that is messaged, it would be the start, because that's kind of, I think, ever since the sequel trilogy did not land in the way that they had intended it to land. It's been a lot of mixed messaging. I wish that they would stop announcing projects until we actually knew that those projects were happening.
I think that was definitely Bob Chapek pushing Kathleen Kennedy to do that, though. I mean, normally studios don't announce things like Marvel doesn't announce things that far in advance. Hell, they had shot Wonder Man before they officially announced it.
Well, yes, but Marvel has also announced a bunch of things that haven't happened.
I was about to say, I feel like
Blade.
Well, okay, Blade, but I think they've learned from that, because they also did announce Inhumans and things like that. But again, in that instance, there was corporate reasons for that.
But that's what I mean. That's unfortunately, it's a corporation that's behind all of this.
It's a bureaucracy.
And that's until the internal messaging and strategy gets better. Unfortunately, the output is not going to improve either. So, that's what I would just like to see is, again, just a more clear messaging from Disney, from Lucasfilm. I definitely, I think, unfortunately, Disney has been relying a little too heavily on Star Wars to fund Disney Plus. And that's why we're getting such an onslaught of things. And I wish rather it was Disney supporting the Star Wars projects rather than the other way around.
It's, and who doesn't want to talk about a space wizard fantasy and bring corporate strategy conversation into it? Let's circle back around just a little bit before we have to go. And I just want to ask you guys what you think about the overarching mystery of this show. Dodd, what are your thoughts on this? Because it turns out there is a pretty big mystery. What in the hell are these people doing on this planet?
Yeah.
How long have they been there? What are they really up to? You don't have to shout out any theories, but I'm excited about that.
Yeah. It feels a lot like what we saw in Jedi Survivor with Tanalorr and the nebulous, hidden planet in the galaxy kind of thing. And I thought that was a fun twist then with it, and I think that this is even a more unique version of that, right? When one of the reasons I came in with such low expectations is because it looked like almost like, you asked an AI bot to, like, do a sci-fi version of Goonies, and, like, that's what we got kind of thing. But with the ship leaves, and then we find out that, like, oh, they just left the treasure planet, that's different. That's new. And then I was like, oh, cool. Now we could look at all these characters here, because this is actually going to be a fun, interesting story that breaks this dynamic before. So, to me, the twist was really the hook that ended up, like, turning me from just being like, oh, this is another thing that, again, I haven't been, hyped up for as much. And then now I'm like, okay, I want to see where this goes now. They're actually taking like a different direction with this stuff.
Heather, what about you?
Yeah, I agree. When I realized like, oh, this is like Reverse Treasure Planet, the Adeline is like El Dorado of sorts, I thought it's really cool and really, really fun. I am a little bit hesitant on, I'm very excited to find out like why they're hidden and on all of these things. I hope it's not like a tie back again, like a High Republic reason this planet had to stay hidden, because I think that is a pattern. It was cool in Jedi Survivor, but I think like now it's becoming, they're relying a little bit too heavily on the High Republic. So I just hope this is something different and new. But I'm really curious now to know, like, what is their government system? Do they know, that the Galactic War has ended? Did they even know the Galactic War existed? Like, like.
It's really interesting.
But it is Republic credits,
even
so they
actual
were
humans,
right, right.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you heard this. So when I was watching it the second time, when the teacher is teaching the stuff, she talks about how people do currencies outside of the barrier, and then she says that, but it's different here inside the barrier because we have multiple currencies. I was like, oh, haha. So they, like, when they talk about being of a glorious treasure, it looks like it's from other places too. So it's kind of maybe like a One Piece situation where it's all been put in one place.
Are they like a weird Canary Island vaults? Is that what it is? Is this like where
maybe? I mean, they talk about the Republic credits, but not like New Republic credits, right? And so that makes me think that, like, yeah, it could be something that was like kind of stored away in like a vault of some sorts, and like that just that in of itself, I feel like was a solid twist on like the expected story that we had. So I loved it.
Well, like I said, I'm looking forward to just having a mystery to solve that's genuinely, hopefully it's set up and it's paced a little bit better than Acolyte. And I'm excited about this show. And I think Star Wars fans are going to be excited about this show too. And you guys outlined a lot of reasons why I think Star Wars fans have a hard time being excited. The biggest one being overexposure. But if projects are great, no one really cares about being overexposed. Like if everything was Mandalorian season 1 and 2, we wouldn't be talking about, oh, is there too much? So hopefully this is great. It sticks the landing. It's like Andor. It brings people back in. Not just for the channel, but man, I'm a Star Wars fan. I love getting hyped about this stuff. Yeah. We do have to cut it off there. Dodson Sites, Heather Antosh, your social links are below. Guys, always a pleasure talking to you. And I want to hear what you guys have to say about all this. Let me know what you think of Skeleton Crew 1 and 2 down in the comments below. And let me know, do you think Star Wars is dying on the vine? Or is there hope for this franchise? Let us know your thoughts on our Twitter, our free-to-join Discord, and all that different stuff that we always talk about in the videos. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.